That's good.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to this live stream of Fat Fritz 2. The question is this the strongest chess engine in the world right now? This is Sagar Shah, and joining me today would be Albert Silver, who is the man behind Fat Fritz 2. It is supposed to be the strongest engine right now, but when it comes to engines, my knowledge is pretty much close to zero. I do not understand many things, and that's why Albert very graciously has agreed to come here and spend some time with us. We are not only going to talk about uh, the engine and how strong it is, but also for the professional players out there who want to use this engine, you will understand what are the best settings and how you can extract the maximum from this engine so that you can use it in your tournament preparation. So that's the plan, and let me just check if the voice and everything is fine before I invite Albert on the stream. Hmm. Yeah, okay. All seems good right now. And
Testing. One, two, three.
just let's bring him on screen. Hello, Albert. How are you?
Hey, Sagar. How are you, my friends? Great to see
Wonderful.
you again.
Wonderful. In fact, I'm meeting you after such a long time. The last time I think we spoke, you were an author, you were an editor. Now you are how do you call yourself? A developer, or how is it?
I have no idea what I call myself. I stick to Albert for simplicity's sake. I get asked that, like, oh, what are you doing? What do you work in? And then I look at people, and I mean, like casually, and I really don't have a clear answer for that. And I just say, yeah, I work with chess. That's the simplest way of putting it, because really that's defined my life for the last, oh my goodness, 30 years at
Yeah,
least. I mean,
absolutely.
so yeah.
And you are a very strong chess player as well. I would like to tell the chat that Albert's rating is he's 2200 plus, close to 2200. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I have not been active recently, in the last years. So yeah, I'm in practice. It's probably even a little bit lower right now. But when I was an active competitor, I was over 2200 FIDE. So sure.
Wow, fantastic. And so, Albert, there's this question in front of you right now. Is Fat Fritz the strongest chess engine out there? Would you say yes or no? How, or is it the complicated answer?
It's yeah. I mean, look, if you really get down to the nitty gritty, it's going to be very close to Stockfish development version, which is basically Stockfish 13, but has not been released.
Mm.
But there are distinct differences. They do share a similar search, which is basically the calculation, the numbers, the nodes per second aspect of it. And where they really differ is the brain, the part that judges and evaluates chess positions, gives you your evaluation score, um, and tells you what it thinks of position X, Y, or Z. And that's where things really starts to get interesting, because the neural networks between themselves are very different, and um, they really have, in some aspects, of course, they're going to agree, and it's obvious because, I mean, we're not going to revolutionize chess and say, oh, e4 is winning, e4 is losing. No, that's silly. And winning positions will continue to be winning positions. And saying that one change once is evaluated differently by zero point 0.1 pawns is nonsense. But there are obvious differences between the two. Some openings, endgame play, especially. I think that the neural
You
network
know,
that I developed is
You know,
clearly stronger.
Albert, I have a full slide here where I
Ah,
where I wanted to just note down what are the differences between fat frits and stockfish, because I think that is one of the key elements here. Also, I think a lot of top players do use stockfish.
Of
and
course,
it's
everybody
like,
should.
yeah, and also Fat Fritz is something that is new to them. Also, a lot of top players are using it. So I just wanted to understand that. Maybe we'll come to it later so that I can, write it down as well for people to just, and also for myself. I did all of this work because I am kind of a beginner in engine management. I don't
Sure.
understand it. I use engines all the time for my work, but on Chessbase, I just press Control K, I load the engine, and I just use it. So that's the only thing I know about them, how to tweak it better, how to make it stronger, or, what should I be using. All of these things are simply alien to me.
Okay, so look, as a player who understands the needs of masters and grandmasters, because I've worked with players of all levels. Beginners obviously won't really care that much about these differences because it won't impact their game as much. As a certain level, it starts to make a real difference, though. And I think that players benefit from using multiple engines with different inputs that have different strengths or differences in characteristics. I know a lot of players, not all players, but a lot of players think that it's all about elo. Oh, doesn't matter. There's no such thing as style with engines. That's okay. That's both true and not true. It depends on how you look at these things. In terms when we talk about style, we think of a decision process where I like certain things, or I have a preference for certain things. And of course, to speak about a chess program with preferences sounds like nonsense because well, it is. But that doesn't discount the evaluation of, let's say, style in, let's say, a theoretical sense, meaning that it's going to be stronger or better, or in certain positions it's going to prefer, it's going to tend to go for certain types of positions and continuations that someone else or another engine is not going to. In that case, style, like humans, is going to be a very real factor. And it's not just a simple elo preference, like, oh yeah, okay, it prefers this move or that move, but it's still elo 12, 15, 20, 50 elo. Um, it's still a little bit more complicated than that because I've been running, I've been testing the engine my God, forever, nonstop, for the last 8 months, more, not 9 months. And I've run literally well over a million test games. I mean, really. Because my tests have to be. I'm measuring differences sometimes that become down to 3 or 4 elo, and to get a measurable test that will allow you to measure such a small difference reliably. Not just like, oh, it was lucky this time and the next time it will be unlucky, and you don't know if it's really 3 elo better or not. You have to test it in a match for 20,000 games, 40,000 games, and well, that adds up to a million games very quickly.
Right.
Um, so there's really no other way to do these things, and for a developer, it's very tiresome. So when people say, "Oh, what do you think about its style of play?" Um, well, I don't watch these millions of games, so and they go really fast. But
But right now, I
so
mean, what
so
I have on the screen right now, is this the kind of the latest list of engines right now, the strongest engines in the world, rating
yes, it
list?
is. Yeah,
Aha.
it
So
is. It
by
is.
that, Fat Fritz is right now number one at 3717 elo.
Yeah, yeah.
And what is the CCRL? How can you tell us a bit more about it?
Sure. CCRL is one of the oldest and most traditional ratings lists in computer chess.
Okay.
The first famous one was called SSDF, and it started back in the 80s or 90s. And then eventually they fell out because they were doing like the machines, they had to plug in and play on a board and things like that. And it was, just a very slow process. And eventually PCs took over. Um, and CCRL very quickly became the reference. They've been around for, I'm not 100% sure. I think they've been around for almost 20 years. So you'll find engines of 20 years ago tested on their list. And they cover different variants. You can see it says the top one says 8 CPU, and they will be testing it in 4 CPU, 1 CPU, etc., so that people can know what to expect with the different setups. And CCRL basically means computer chess ratings list.
Okay.
It's not that complicated.
Right. So right now, Fat Fritz is number one with 3,700 elo. That's quite insane. And next is Stockfish with 3,694, and then there is Komodo 3,672, and Leela Chess Zero, which is
On a
3,649.
2080.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they set up they show you the hardware because they want to make sure it's a transparent process.
Right.
So, I'll say, what if I have a 3090? Well, then obviously this ratings list might not be the same.
Yeah, so basically, how important is the computer setup? Because I have this small list which actually you yourself had published it at some point, just to bring that up here.
I keep
That,
getting asked to make an update on that, by the way.
by the way, this was something that you had posted on ChessBase at some point, that you need a good graphics card for making Fat Fritz work. Is that
Yeah.
true?
For Fat Fritz 1, yes, absolutely. It's of the generation of Leela nets, which is based on AlphaZero. AlphaZero and DeepMind, everybody knows about, of course. And if you don't, then look it up because everybody should know about it. It's a fantastic project. And basically, they published all of their formula and how they did it, and it led to an open source project called Leela Chess. And Fat Fritz is based on that project, and it too basically tries to create a new neural network with new ideas. Instead of being all zero, it incorporates human games, engine games, self-play games, table bases, and the whole 9 yards.
So basically,
But
Leela Chess was similar to
it needs a GPU.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, but it definitely needs a GPU. It's the requirement because the neural network is so large and so convoluted that the CPU can read it, but it reads it very, very slowly. So what happens is, and I promise to make this really, really fast. What happens is that when it's using, let's say, and this is true for Leela too, when it's using Leela or Fat Fritz or any other neural network in that family, it's basically running the calculations on your normal CPU, your normal computer processor, but it can't read the neural network. So let's say it sends this position. It will send it to the GPU, the video card. The GPU will read the neural network, say, 56.1% winning. Fine. It sends it back to the CPU. The CPU does another calculation. Then it says, and what about this position? And it does the same thing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, which is why, and if you did this with a pure CPU, it would be 1,000 times slower. Really. So the GPU makes it 1,000 times faster as a result in practice. And so it's really necessary. And even then people complain and say, why is it so slow? Well, even with that incredible slowness, the neural network's brain, its ability to judge positions is so incredibly powerful. Its evaluation is so incredibly precise that it is able to not worry about the 1,000 times slower tactics that it is obviously missing on many levels, because its positional judgment is so perfect that it doesn't get in trouble. So this is it's not really a factor.
Nice. Okay. It's very, very nicely said. By the way, Vrashin Agarwal, who is one of the viewers watching this, says, how does AlphaZero compare with all these engines?
Oh, it's weaker. Understand. I mean, it's if DeepMind put their minds to it and all the resources, I'm sure they could build another neural network, bigger, with new ideas. Maybe they would probably be the best again. I mean, I'm not doubting in any way their ability, but their engine and their project is 3 years old by now, and more than 3 years old. So you have to take that into account. I mean, they haven't bothered trying to keep it up with it because it's not been their main focus. But if they put their minds to it, I'm pretty sure that they would be number one again if they really tried. But the original AlphaZero as it stood, the final version, is definitely weaker at this level than all of these, whether it's Leela, Fat Fritz 2, Stockfish, and so forth.
Okay.
Even the Stockfish, remember, think of Stockfish 8, which is one that what they were beating it by back in 2017. We're already on Stockfish 12. You think Stockfish 12 cannot beat Stockfish 8? Oh, it's going to smack it. It's going to be humiliating, and it's going to be proportionate. So
If I get this correct, earlier there were all these brute force engines, then came these neural network engines, and right now, Fat Fritz is like a hybrid engine which has brute force plus neural network. Is that true or not really?
no, that's a very precise way of saying it. One of the things that when Leela started coming out, everyone was fascinated. Like, my gosh, it's so smart in chess. Oh, but it's not. It doesn't have that super calculation of billions of positions that I get with Stockfish. So it became natural that you was using both because you needed to use both. Sometimes there were tactical oversights by the Leela nets, my Fat Fritz even, that Stockfish would catch simply because it was calculating so much, even if it didn't judge positions as well. On the other hand, you had some positional judgments that you had from Stockfish that just really weren't on the same level of the Leela or Fat Fritz neural networks. So everybody began to imagine this dream scenario where you would have, let's say, the brain of Fat Fritz or Leela combined with that speed and fantastic precision of the Stockfish search engine. And this is what we have now, very much so.
Mm.
I don't know if the neural network is quite as powerful as the Leela nets, but it's so close that it's not really that big an issue. So yeah, I mean, it's really the best of both worlds.
This was actually told to me a few minutes ago by Anish Giri, who's actually also watching this. He had mentioned to me that he's also seeing this and also interested to understand this better. Frederick Friedel in the chat says, but Fat Fritz 2 now runs on a plain CPU. It doesn't need a GPU. Is that
This is very
correct?
true. Yes. So what happened is basically is and it has to be mentioned, this particular neural network technology that has allowed this amazing marriage of super fast speed and neural networks to also run only on a CPU. So I can run it on my laptop just fine. I don't need a big powerful graphics card like I used to, or others. Is that the Shogi engine world. Shogi is this Japanese chess game, and they have all their engines and stuff. And some of their developers were also looking at this project, but they didn't like the GPU thing. And instead of trying to find more powerful neural networks, they invented this whole new idea called NNUE,
Yes.
which is
What is that?
efficiently updated neural networks. Yeah, it's backwards, so it would be like EUNN, and they call it NNUE. But
Okay.
yeah, it basically means efficiently updated neural networks. And the idea is that their network, the key idea really, is that instead of judging the position every single time from scratch, it basically takes the position it last evaluated and only calculates the difference that changed. So let's say we have the starting position, and instead of reevaluating the entire start position, it's only going to evaluate that E4 pawn that you changed, or D4 or whatever. And that is what it's going to recalculate. And the rest will stay the same, and it's able to combine these all together. And that allows it to vastly accelerate its calculation process and combine the two. Now, this happened in the shogi world, not the chess world. But the Shogi engine developers had been, and they acknowledged this openly, had been borrowing ideas and techniques for years from the Stockfish open source project, which, as we all know, has been like the number one chess project, open source project around, aside from Leela, that has really just changed the way chess engines and how we develop them and so forth. They have this huge community. It's an amazing project with brilliant programmers. And the Shoki developers had been borrowing from them as well, and they decided to share this technology of theirs with the Stockfish world that they had borrowed from, and they integrated it and brought it into the open source project to share this NNUE technology with everyone else. And they developed tools to show how this could be developed and so forth. And this led to actually Stockfish 12, which is why Stockfish 12 had this huge jump in strength over Stockfish 11. And they built their own neural networks, but the neural network of Stockfish 12 was based entirely on games and evaluations by the classic Stockfish, Stockfish 11, Stockfish 12, but without NNUE. And so that was their brain, and they developed billions of positions with it and built a neural network, and that led to Stockfish 12. And this is great. And a lot of people started doing the same thing, which I did not understand, because if you have one, why do you want to do the same thing? But so my idea was to develop a neural network that had a smarter evaluation. And what would be smarter than Stockfish evaluation? Not just calculation, evaluation. Well, Fat Fritz. At least that's how I saw it. So I started to entertain this project and develop a neural network which was actually twice as big as the one that Stockfish uses. This was not an obvious decision because some people had been trying this before and failed. And what I mean by failed is that the neural network and the end product was a lot weaker because it was so much slower. So yes, it was a bigger neural network, but it didn't compensate for this by enough ELO to make up for it. So their neural networks, the end result was 50 ELO weaker than Stockfish 12. And really, so I began to develop this. I used Fat Fritz evaluations. Oh my goodness, I rented 14 2080 Ti GPUs, which cost me a bloody fortune, for months and months and months on cloud computing to develop billions of positions of evaluations of Fat Fritz, which I then converted into data that could be built into a neural network for this NNUE technology and run inside of Stockfish. So to be clear, I did develop the neural network on my own with my own data, new ideas and stuff. But the core engine is still the original Stockfish, and all full credit has to be given to the Stockfish community and developers for that. No question about it. Without it, it wouldn't be nearly as powerful.
So what are these differences that you developed into it that you say now it evaluates better than Stockfish?
It does. It does. So there's no question about it. It does run slower though, because the twice as large neural network is not a free benefit. So it actually has to compensate for the speed with even more knowledge, just like Leela did, but on a smaller scale because I'm not 1,000 times slower. That would have been problematic. So the neural network is slower, and even running slower, it is still able to beat Stockfish 12 and edge out even Stockfish developer in a wide range of positions. This will, of course, depend on how you test it.
Is this something that this is like some recent score, yeah, of stock Fat Fritz?
This was shared with me actually yesterday. So this is an independent tester who runs tests for me, but he runs it as he likes. The only thing that we agree on, which I ask him to do, is to make sure that the openings are balanced. And the reason is that a lot of testers test on very imbalanced openings. Even if I know people who actually test actual engines on these 3-move books. Basically, an opening suite that has only 3 moves, 20,000 different positions of 3 moves. 3 moves from the start position. And I explained to him, I said, look, I know it sounds like you're having enormous variety, but you're not. What you're really having is a lot of different opening positions, and you will have different games, but you're not actually going to have a lot of variety. And it's easy to explain why. If I have 3 moves, let's say e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, a3, that'll be my 3rd move, because we're going to have to vary all of them to get 20,000 different 3-move openings. The fact is that I'm never, ever going to reach a mainline King's Indian with that. I'm never, ever going to reach a mainline Queen's Indian, a Slav, or other openings. Why? Because those openings are only defined after 8 or 9 moves. And if the engine doesn't actually like to enter those kinds of structures, pawn structures, piece development, French defense, and whatever, it's never going to happen. So basically, you might have 30,000 different games from those 3 moves, but you're not going to have an actual huge variety in actual opening and pawn structures. You're just going to have a lot of games that started a little bit differently, ended a little differently, but have very similar layouts because the engine is going to obviously steer towards the pawn structures that it thinks are best, and those are all going to be similar every single time. So you won't have a full range of testing in that kind of environment.
True.
So he creates an opening suite that will test all openings from ECO-A, which will have the Benoni, the Benko, the English, and the Dutch defense, all the way to ECO-E, which of course will be the Nimzu Indian and the King's Indian and all of the variants in between.
Right.
And it will cover all the openings. And for me, that's essential because, look, the engine that I developed, the neural network that I developed, is as a chess player has to be useful for me to in all openings. I need to know where it's going to help me. It doesn't matter if it's beating engine X in all of these three move things if it still sucks in the King's Indian defense, which is where I'm using it. So I need to know that it can analyze in all situations and how it will handle those situations.
True, true. Very interesting. And Albert, going to the actual practical application of it, which is very interesting for me, I would like to, show my screen to the viewers so that, they can see what's happening here. Yeah, so this is it. So here's a chessboard on Chessbase, and basically when I load this, the list of engines come up here for me. So I have Fat Fritz 2 right now. So should I choose this?
Yes, absolutely. You might want to click on advanced.
Okay, let's click on advanced here, and yeah.
Okay, so the first thing here you have, and I'm just giving this as basic guidance because I know a lot of people will ask about these things, and I get asked about it. So let's just get that out of the way. So the first thing you need to know is that in this setup, smart CPU usage, what it means for the GUI, the interface, is that it's going to reduce the number of threads if it feels that there are too many. I tend to turn this off personally. I don't find it necessary.
So
The second
if I
thing,
turn it off, what would happen? I missed the point.
in theory, it's not going to impact your analysis at all. This was more of a problem back in the time of Houdini and Ribka, and because those particular engines, when they tried to use all of the cores, they could literally paralyze your machine. I mean, you would be analyzing it, and suddenly your mouse would be going tuck, 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 like stuttering like crazy. Your whole computer would start to freeze a little bit, and the smart CPU usage is actually a legacy function that was used when this was a real problem. Nowadays, the engines don't really do that anymore, even if they use all of the threads. And Windows itself is much smarter at handling overloads of CPUs and will manage this yourself. So our smart CPU usage in practice today is not necessary. It doesn't
Okay,
add
got
anything.
it.
So the hash table, yeah, it
What is
depends on
this?
how many.
And is this a good maximum? I mean, do you think this is a good one? How is this determined? 2, 4, 5, 7.
Okay, so this is really only going to be a factor if you have either a ton of CPU cores. Let's say how many cores does your machine have right now? The one that you're running this on.
I think it has 8 cores.
Okay, so 12
Or maybe
gigabytes of hash table is overkill. I would use 12 or 16 or 32 even. I mean, if I had that much. Only if I was running a machine with at least 32 or 64 threads to analyze with. At this level, if you're using 8, I really wouldn't use more than 4. I mean, it's really, really almost no benefit in practice. It's not going to add anything.
How would I know how many cores? Like if someone wants to know how many cores their computer has, how would they know? I'm going
Well,
really basic here, and
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
I know a lot
Well,
of people would be at that stage.
well, I would hope that they would know what they bought, but okay, the easiest way in practice, they have no clue and there's no little label on their machine and nothing to help them out with. Yeah, the easiest way would be literally this would be a function of your machine.
I mean, basically,
Okay,
when you buy it,
okay,
you
so
should know it.
basically you would have to go into your Windows, your settings, and then look up the configuration and system. So click on there, go for settings.
Yeah. And
Okay, click on system. Scroll down. No, the sidebar. Sorry, this is all display. It's the sidebar, and click on about. About is the bottom one, very
okay,
last.
okay, got it. So this is how people can get to
And
know.
there you go. There you go. It says processor, so 4 installed RAM. So yeah, it doesn't actually tell you how many threads. It does tell you the processor, and you can always look that up. But I can tell you in advance that being an i7 9750, yeah, this is probably an 8 core. Oh, it's a laptop. Well, in that case, it's a 4 core. I don't think this is an 8 core. So this is probably a quad core with 8 threads. You can always look that up.
Okay.
There is another way to do this, a sneaky way through ChessBase, if you want.
Okay.
But it requires opening the engine twice if you really, really want to get sneaky about this. Just open Fritz 2, forget about advanced, just open it up. We'll worry about how strong it is or what it's saying in a second. We'll just open up the engine.
Yeah.
Okay, now click on this. You see how it says 6 CPUs?
Yes.
Okay,
Here.
click on that. Okay, notice how it says CPUs 1 to 12?
Right.
Okay, so basically what it's telling us is this is actually a 6 CPU core machine with 12 threads. Because
Right.
we know it's an i7, it has hyper-threading. And that's the sneaky way of learning how many CPU threads you can actually use. You can
Okay.
actually jack this up to 12 without any problems. And that's the secret backdoor way of looking at it through ChessBase.
Cool. So do you think that I should keep this as 12 threads? How does that help me if it's 1 or 12? The threads basically.
Well, more CPUs, the more processing power it's giving the engine, and therefore the quicker the results. So sure,
Okay.
absolutely, I would definitely set it to 12.
But then the other things that are happening on the computer
I just
would.
hope it won't affect your recording. So you actually might want to jack that down to, let's say, 6,
Okay,
just for this
right now.
particular
For right now, yes.
scenario
For the
here.
live
Because
stream.
otherwise, if I start going, I want that, that might be a problem.
Okay. So I keep this CPUs as 6, and I think we should go back into the advanced settings and try to finish that up.
One thing here, you
Okay,
have, I
sorry.
can see you're using, no, it's good. It's just, yeah, I can see here you have, well, we'll do this in a second. There's a little delay here between you and me. So click on advanced.
Sorry.
Okay, it's all good, relax.
Yeah. I'll do it again. So I'll go to advanced here, first opening up the box. Okay.
Okay, so I would lower the hash table. I think that for even for 6 cores this is overkill. I would stick it to, let's say, 4.
This one?
You can put 8 or something. It's not going to make a lot of difference unless you're analyzing positions for a very long time, and that's rarely the way to go when you're analyzing.
Okay. So this is
So so do this. Now go to engine parameters.
Okay.
Above. Now I'm just going to quickly show what this is. You don't have to normally you don't have to worry about this. So when you install the engine with ChessBase, it automatically defaults to the normal number of cores, threads. In this case, it recognized 6, so it set this as a default at 6. You can set this to 12 here, or you can set this to 12 after you open the engine.
Right. Got it.
Right. The rest you really want to leave as default. Skill level, move overhead, all of these things are really not important. Move overhead is actually only for matches between engines. And yeah, and you have the neural network itself, which identifies. Looks fine. I really wouldn't touch anything here.
And what is analysis contempt here?
So there is a contempt value that's used mostly in engine matches, which you see above, contempt 24. And some people like to use this also in the analysis because it helps against weaker players, saying, I want to push this position a little more. I want to favor fighting games and pushing it a little more than I would reasonably.
Okay.
And it basically is an offset of the default value. In theory, from what I understand from the NNUE, from the Stockfish developers, the contempt actually has no impact when you're using the NNUE networks. This was really more of a factor when using the classical non-neural network evaluation.
Okay,
I believe it has no impact whatsoever here.
Okay. So I'll do this. Okay. And do I click OK here and go for this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just click OK.
So we have the right now the engine running here,
Yeah.
and below it is the let's check function of chessbase. I
There's
can,
something I need to warn you about here.
yeah,
So it's this. I see that in your evaluation window, you're running 4 concurrent evaluations of 4 different positions
yes,
at the same time.
yes.
Right. This it comes at a cost. It's not free. This is the equivalent of running each line. This is a very rough equivalent of running each line at 1.5 CPUs. Basically, your 6 CPUs divided by 4. If you
Mm.
were to increase this to 6, you would basically be running each thread at 1 CPU. So if you really want full power, you're going to have to reduce that,
Maybe 2.
maybe 2.
Okay.
Now it's the equivalent of 3 CPUs per line.
Okay, got it. So let's say that here there is this all these things over here just to make to understand. First of all,
Yep.
this is the evolution here. What is the evaluation of the position comes here. The depth basically let's just say that I make the moves of the very well-known game recently that happened between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So,
Okay.
which was a very complicated game with all sorts of preparation coming in. Bishop d3.
I
Uh,
sadly missed it, but oh, nice.
yeah,
A two knights.
yes, it was a two knights, and here he went.
Bishop d3. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
bishop d3 was played, and then I think he went bishop d6 here. Oh no, sorry, knight d5, of course. Knight f3, and bishop d6. He went castles, rook e1, and there came this move f5. And then here, I was very surprised to see that Pat Fritz actually started recommending this move rook takes e5. Actually, only knight takes e5 has been played before here, but it also
Okay.
gives rook takes e5, which has never been played before as an interesting alternative. So
Okay.
maybe we can, I mean, just to, so here right now, this depth that is given here, what does that mean?
These are not moves, but half moves, what we call plies in terminology. It's basically one move would be e4, e5, and a ply would be just e4 or just e5. One move by one side. So 27 depth basically means 13 moves and a half
One second,
ahead.
Albert. I think our voice is lagging right now because of this tremendous pressure. How should I deal with this right now that my voice is lagging?
Reduce the CPUs. Reduce the CPUs.
Okay.
Just set it to, well, okay, 1.
For now,
That's the
for
greatest.
now, I don't know if this helped, guys. Just let us know if reducing the CPU helped in lagging. People were saying that there was a small lag in the voice.
Okay, so I don't know, but yeah. So, right. Basically, I mean, if you're running an engine and you're doing a number of things like you're doing here, I mean, we're doing a conversation through Skype, so it's running processes. You're doing a recording of the transmission and the transmission, which of course is using processors. And you have 6 core real processors in your machine, as we know. And so if you're using all 6 for the engine, yeah, it's going to really suck in that all of those resources. You might, if in this case, you really want to reduce it, let's say to 4. If you leave 2, it should be more than enough to be able to handle all of your stuff.
Okay.
This is just practical usage for anybody. I mean, it's not you specifically. If I'm doing a bunch of things on the side that require processing, Word, for example, is not something that would worry me because it's not doing anything actively. In your case, you are. So leave 2 extra, and everything else you can run engines on.
Okay, got it. And so here, these are to increase the lines, these are to decrease. Here's depth. What would be a good depth when people can, it depends on the position, right? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's no there's no absolute in this. I mean, it's going to depend on the position, and I could tell you that here 13 moves is enough, and suddenly tomorrow somebody discovers a fantastic move that's 14 moves deeper, and
Correct.
then it's like, yeah, you said 13 moves was enough. Well, I don't have a crystal ball, you know. I don't know where every key move is going to come out. Maybe it'll be at 18, and maybe it was found at 8, and after that everything's the same. I don't know. So yeah,
Right.
it's a
Okay.
judgment call.
And here, what is this? It shows what it's calculating right now.
Right. It shows us the current calculating move. Right now it's saying knight takes e5, even though it has an equal evaluation as slightly the number one. And we know that rook takes e5 is right behind it, and that's the second move in its order out of 31 candidate moves.
Okay. Okay. And what is kilo knots per second? I remember that if you have a brute force engine, this makes a lot of sense, but for these neural network engines, not so much. Is that true?
Um, well, it always makes sense. It's just that it's the absolute number that will change on what's important, on what is considered really good or really bad. You won't be doing, let's say, 400 kilonodes, which means 400,000 nodes per second, with a neural network engine, but it doesn't need that many nodes per second to achieve, incredible strength of analysis. So it's going to be different. You can't use the same reference, but it's always important. I mean, 100,000. Let's say I have 50,000 nodes per second with Fat Fritz 1. And another guy is able to produce 120,000. Well, that's better than 50,000. So it's always important. It's just that 50,000 with Stockfish or Fat Fritz 2 would be really, really weak. And with that other reference, it's not. So it's just different parameters, different paradigm.
Okay. Okay. But in this case, how does 425 kilo knots per second? How would it compare? Is that okay or?
It's slow.
So if I increase the CPUs, it would go up.
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
without a question. In fact, you can do that now. Why don't you just jack that up to 3? I'm pretty sure it won't have a real impact. Give it a second to start the engine.
Yeah. So it now went to 750.
Yeah, part of the reason is it might be using the same hash, which is, of course, keeping it impaired. But yeah, it's going to increase more and more. It's not a linear process. It's not a linear thing, obviously. And one of the reasons is this. When Well, I'm going to actually avoid that technical conversation, but let me just say that it's not 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals this many nodes per second. There is a technical loss because it's actually using each processor and calculating many times the same things and sharing the processes and waiting for one while the other does the analysis so that it can build its tree of analysis to find the best move for you. And there is a wastage. Traditionally, the wastage is about 30%.
Okay. What else do I have to keep in mind while using, or am I all set here with regards to an engine?
Just remember that there are different opinions, and you should really try to use as many as possible. I mean, if you have only one, of course, I'm going to say, oh, use Fat Fritz 2. Sure. But if you have the possibility, you should definitely maximize your options, and see what others think. By no means am I saying, oh, just because it beats Lilo or Fat Fritz by X ELO, therefore you should only use this. I don't agree with that. Um, they might have different strengths and ideas that one actually overlooks, but at some stage you find it more interesting. Keep your options open and see what there is.
Okay, so for example, let's say if I load another engine right now, let's say it gets really
If
heavy.
if you if yeah yeah I would definitely reduce the cores of the first before I started doing that. Safer, because while it might not accumulate, let's say, free, yeah, remember also that the hash table is the same thing. It's going to be accumulating this. So if one engine is using 8 and you try to put the other one 8, that means 16 is being used, and they're not sharing that.
Okay. Here I can use one. But look at the difference in the evaluation. I mean, although you have to give some time, but I think
Sure.
different engines would evaluate this position differently. Yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. When I was running matches between Stockfish 12 and Fat Fritz 2, and I ran many, 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 many. My first editions of Fat Fritz 2, the earliest ones, were weaker than Stockfish 12 by a margin. Um, they, uh, I noticed that there were differences, let's say, in how some openings were happening in terms of elo, and that was what I meant about the whole style conversation earlier on. I noticed, for example, that Fat Fritz 2 tend to have a slight, I won't say weakness. Let's just say it didn't perform quite as strongly in ECOA openings as it did with some others. And in the others, it would actually outperform its basic ELO over average compared to ECOA and some other ones as well. So it's nice to know their strengths and weaknesses so that you can leverage this. Just as a GM would hire a specialist, um, let's say if you're looking for the greatest Najdorf specialist, you're going to be looking for MVL. Maxime is the recognized god of the Najdorf for the moment in terms of theory and understanding of it. Um, and you would probably prefer him in terms of analysis uh, of the Najdorf even over Carlsen. In terms of I need somebody to help study the theory of, because it's not that Carlsen is a weaker player. It's not. It's just that if you needed the biggest specialist on that particular opening, well, he's the guy. And it's the same true of engines. If you know that one engine is going to perform better in some particular kinds of positions, it makes sense to use them, even if on the ratings list or whatever, one is ahead or behind the other. That's why I say use all of your options. I'm not saying that Fat Fritz 2 is the absolute last word in every single possibility. I don't
Hmm.
know that. And
So,
in
so
fact, I would be surprised if it was.
do you think Fat Fritz 2 performs better in aggressive positions, in positional positions? Because I think some engines are better in certain kinds of positions, right?
And they are, as like I said. Um, you can't really reduce it like that anymore. I mean, that kind of simplified way of judging engines is wrong behind us. I mean,
Hmm.
really, to say that Fat Fritz 2 is better positionally than Stockfish or worse positionally, yeah, maybe sometimes. I mean, it's again, it's going to be really subject to all kinds of exceptions and case scenarios. Um, they're just too strong. It's like taking a top GM and saying, yeah, is Kramnik worse in tactics or best in tactics than another player like than I don't know, than Anand. I don't know. It depends. It's going to be really very very specific on the conditions and what scenario you're talking about. You
Right.
know, um, I don't think they're just so strong now that they don't have these obvious deficiencies where one is just clearly sucks at positional play and the other one is better.
Hmm.
They're just past that.
Okay, very interesting. And finally, just about the cloud engines here, because some people may not have powerful engines to run on
Yeah.
their computer. They can also go to cloud and use Fat Fritz, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you have two options basically when you're using the cloud engines, and I strongly recommend that you use this option. You can rent an engine, obviously, from somebody else, which we see here. We have, what is it, Chess Engine, and you will
Yeah.
have other accounts of people who are offering it. And you can always put your own engine on the cloud. Let's suppose you have a desktop and a laptop. If you have that luxury, you can take your desktop, put your engine on the cloud as a private user, set it to offer private engine instead of public engine, and set it's only for your name. then with your laptop, wherever you might be, you can connect to it and use your engine from your desktop as if it were in your laptop.
This
So
is
basically, you could
amazing.
have, yeah, no, it's wonderful, and I think there are a lot of GMs who use that nowadays, top GMs, and I think it's the way to go. I mean, if you have that luxury, but if not, then by all means, rent one of the engines. There's no problem with that. There are excellent rates and lots of options there for you.
Right. So just what
But I mean,
Albert was saying right now, I put up my Fat Fritz 2 engine over here as a private engine, and because I'm logged in with my account, I can, if I log in to another machine somewhere, with that account, I can see it and I can use it for free using
yeah,
the resources of my current laptop here,
yeah.
which is how a lot of top players, they set up a very powerful machine at home, then put this on the cloud, and then go to tournaments with the laptop and can use very strong
And it
engines.
doesn't use the battery because I mean, when you're using the CPU processors of your laptop at 100%, let's face it, it's going to eat up that battery, um, like uh, like a child who just got locked into a candy store. Oh yeah, gimme, 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 and it's going to do the same thing with your battery life. But if you're using this through the resource of the engine cloud, the only resource it's actually using is just the energy required to connect to the internet. The actual analysis power is being used on the engine that you're connecting to. So it's doing all of the heavy lifting here, and your laptop is just basically connecting to it, reading it, and running it as if it were inside, like a normal engine, but with all of the benefits of the desktop power and none of
True.
the loss of laptop battery power. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful resource.
By the way, Anish in the chat says, would be good to see concrete examples and games or positions where one engine is superior to the other. Also, good marketing so people can see differences.
Okay. Well,
I
I
have
actually
one
I shared actually one
position.
game with you.
Yeah, I have this Floor Botwinic game and as well as Fat Fritz Stockfish game. So
Yeah.
this is one which we can check here. Okay, bishop takes. I think this is the position which Carsten Mueller was trying to analyze and to
Mhm.
come to a conclusion of. So
Okay. Well, it
basically,
actually comes out much later because yeah, he was actually analyzing the end game after this. But yeah,
okay, we can go to that point.
yeah. No, no, it develops pretty deeply.
Also, we had one question while this loads. There was one question by Scale Tail. Just a
Remember
second.
those 6 CPUs, my friend?
Yes, I will reduce it to 2,
Sure.
and I'll add also.
Consider reducing
The
the
hash
hash
table.
tables there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's probably slowing it down while it tries to load all of that into memory. Yeah,
Okay.
my suggestion is my would be to reload Fat Fritz 2 and set the hash table to a modest 2 gigabytes.
Okay.
Let's
I'll
keep them
first.
both, let's say, reasonably low.
But does that not affect the evaluations and the calculations, or that's fine?
Not at this level.
Hmm.
It needs to fill out the hash table before that actually becomes a factor. And basically, it's not going to really affect it so much as cause a little bit of slowdown at some level. Um, yeah, I think it's a really modest difference, if any, unless you're really choking it with a lack of hash tables at all.
Okay. I'll also make sure that the other one is also at 2 gigabytes. So
Yeah, and you have to remember that, okay, I spoke about, let's say, how much it gains and loses. But remember, every time you open a new engine, it's basically not sharing those resources. So if you have 6 CPUs as you do, and you set it for, here your Stockfish is running 12, for example, it's basically using your entire machine.
Right now, quite
Yeah,
struggling
I
with
would,
everything.
don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, do not do
It's
that.
okay,
Close that,
right?
close that, close that.
Okay.
No, close it, close it. Yeah. Close the engine. You're not going to be able to run anything with Stockfish using 12 CPUs, my friend. I would reduce that
Oh,
to 2.
I was not
Otherwise,
alert of that.
your entire machine is going to be running slower than a sea turtle.
Okay, got it. So here I'm going to Fat Fritz 2. Advanced is 2.
Advanced.
Okay.
Do the same thing also with 2 CPUs. Oh, wait. It's 2 CPUs.
It
2
was 2.
CPUs. Just.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Here. How do I set the
Engine
CPUs from?
parameters. Engine
Engine
parameters. Engine.
parameters. And threads.
Okay. Actually, it's set for 2. It's set for 1, which is fine. You can put it to 2. I just wanted to make sure that your entire machine didn't say, Albert, can you hear me still? So.
Okay, so here we have both of them. And
now you can increase Fat Fritz to 2 CPUs to keep it even. It should be fine with your machine.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be a factor.
So right now, I mean, at this stage, how do we evaluate? Like, because both of them are
both of them are strong and they have very clearly different evaluations.
right.
And the reason for this is twofold. One is simply that, look, honestly, Fat Fritz 2 has better endgame evaluations as a rule. I'm not saying it's universal. I'm sure people will end up finding up exceptions with what I'm saying here, but it's undeniable. I've tested them both very extensively without table bases. And this is useful because then you get to see what it really knows about chess as opposed to what it's reading from a table base and not. And I've found situations which are clear draws, dead draws, really simple draws, not complicated ones. And Stockfish will be saying, "I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning," and anybody who reads that will think, "Oh, I should be winning this," and it's not true. Now, table bases can mitigate this a little bit and correct some of this, but in the end, if it doesn't reach enough, if it's depending on this, there'll be core situations which is going to be misevaluating where table bases aren't going to save it anymore. So it really has to have that core knowledge anyway. And I found these deficiencies quite a lot. And basically it comes down to how the neural networks were trained. Fat Fritz 2 was trained on the evaluations of Fat Fritz, which simply has more chess knowledge in it, compared to the core evaluation of the classic Stockfish engine, which trained Stockfish 12 neural network using 8-ply and 12-ply evaluations of the classic alpha beta engine, not neural network. So, yeah. But you'll find exceptions. I don't doubt it. They'll find cases where Fat Fritz might have been a little bit like here. Maybe it'll find that it was a little pessimistic. Maybe it should have realized it was already winning and it took longer to see it. I don't know. But in practice,
I see that throughout what I'm checking right now, Stockfish is giving a higher evaluation than Fat Fritz. I mean, maybe it's more optimistic about White's chances here.
Yeah, I mean, that's clear. That's clear. The question really is how often does that turn out to be a concrete reality?
And to know which engine is right, maybe you have to let it go till the end. Yeah, maybe make them play or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, like I said, it's not one position that's going to give you the absolute truth on this.
That's true.
On this kind of situation. I mean, it's like certain end games. Sometimes one player misevaluated an end game, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a worse end game player. It was that particular one that threw him off. Yeah, I don't really, I really can't say honestly. It's just one of those things. Someday maybe people could analyze, let's say, a clear test of situations, play them out to the end, 10,000 times, different situations, and we'll find the absolute truth. But I'll be honest with you, I've seen a lot of analysis of both of these engines, and I'm really very confident that overall the endgame evaluation of Fat Fritz 2 is ahead. I mean, definitely.
Okay, cool. And there's also one interesting game here that I have, which let me just pull that up. There's also one more engine running here, which I should do. Doesn't over.
Just remember, if you open a different, I was going to say, if you open a different
Yeah, I won't open
board,
another.
be
Yeah.
careful. You already have two engines. It's going to really.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to copy paste the PGN in this board so that.
Okay.
Because this one was a game played between Fat Fritz and Stockfish, right?
So I have a tip for you, my friend.
Yes.
You can actually, okay, is the other board still open? The one with the
Yes.
Flora and Botvinnik?
Yes.
Okay, so go to it.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, and click next game. Or I think it's like, what is it? F11 or Control F11?
Yeah, I know. But sometimes it loads the next game from some other database, and
Well,
I
okay,
don't
but in
know.
this case, it should be from the same
It
one.
worked well. Yes. Okay. Thanks for that. I didn't have to copy paste.
Yeah, I was just trying to save you a little bit of effort.
So this is Fat Fritz playing against Stockfish here,
Right.
and
The
this
latest
was
version,
the
as you can
latest.
see by the dates, February 14.
And this was a game that was played by you, or how was it? Like Fat Fritz
No,
and
there's a lot of people are obviously running their own tests of Fat Fritz 2. They're very excited by it, and they want to see how it plays. So they'll be running lots of different tournaments of their own, basically to see how they perform. It's not so much to test the ELO claims. Some might do that, of course, for that reason. But basically to see the engine playing against another engine and see what happens, see what the games look like. And like you, who asked about the engine's style, and I said I don't really have a clear answer to that. They want to see how it plays and make their own evaluations. Now, this is a user who has a really powerful machine. He has very powerful Intel processor with 36 threads, lots of RAM, 7-piece data table bases, and all that jazz. And he runs these tournaments between engines, and he likes to test it against the best to make sure there's no, but there's better than Stockfish 12 out there if you really know what you're doing. Fine. So he found the better one. He decided to test it himself. He used the latest development version of Stockfish out there and ran a match. And he ran into this position here in one of the games. And in this particular position, Fat Fritz 2 is ahead, no question. And Fat Fritz 2 evaluates his position as very favorable. But Stockfish says it's 0.8. 0.82 was its exact evaluation. Now, in theory, when you're running these things in these simplified positions, 0.82 isn't going to win the game. I mean, that's basically the practical reality I see happening the most often
where
in such
is it?
situations.
Here. Okay, 0.82. Yeah.
Right.
So
I translate it because if you go to the next move, he sent all this to me in computer gibberish. I'm sorry. But if you look at Queen C4, there's a T equals and an E equals. And the E equals is the number of center pawns. So that would be E96 would be 0.96.
Okay.
So I just tried to make that a little easier to read. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So he sent this position, and it started at 0.82 per Stockfish's evaluation. And what happened is that little by little, it got completely outplayed. If this was a theoretical draw, or if it was defensible for black, it failed miserably. And the evaluation graph that I saw as a result just went like this. And it was constantly saying, "Oh, this is nothing. This is nothing. This is nothing." Fat Fritz didn't play the best move, according to Stockfish. And gee, I'm not so happy with my position. It's getting a little bit worse, but I'm still fine. It's okay, whatever. Oh, Fat Fritz 2 played a worse move again. My position's getting worse again. And eventually this turned out to a massive loss, as you can see if you go through the moves. A lot of the times there was a disagreement. A lot of the times, obviously, Fat Fritz 2 is not playing the moves that Stockfish is recommending, and it's winning. So
Hmm.
that comes down to who was right and who played the end game better. And this is just an example of why I've come to this conclusion that it just simply plays end games better. I mean, it's not a universal thing. It's not every end game that's drawn is going to be won. But this is for me was a clear example of a position where if it says 0.82, it probably steered toward this position. I mean, it's not just like that it misplayed the end game as a result and eventually lost it. But it actually, if it says it's 0.82 and it's not 0.82, then you have to ask yourself, did it actually try to enter this position thinking it was only 0.82 and defensible, and it was wrong? Because as you well know, if you're going for the wrong end game, well, it won't matter what happens after that.
Right, right. And yeah, right now, I mean, it thought that this could be held, but eventually it was ground out.
Yeah.
Sometimes all these maneuvers are very difficult for humans to understand, but
Yeah. I'm sympathetic with that. I cannot help you there. I don't claim to play end games on their scale, but I just see what happens.
correct. Yeah, true,
The
true.
evaluation scale changing. I can see the differences and choices. If, for example, if Fat Fritz 2 had played all of the recommendations by Stockfish and had won, then I could just say, well, Stockfish played the best moves. It just misevaluated it, and
Right.
it was just wrong. But that's not what happened. It played different moves, and that's what happened.
I'll leave the game later on in the description so that you guys can also download it and check it on your own and come to your
I
own
recommend it.
conclusion. So Albert, I would like to go back to like the non-chess board version. So I guess we've covered almost everything how a chess player should maintain his engine, right? Is there something that I'm missing here?
No, not really. I mean, all engines require a player to become familiar with. It's like working with a new second or something. You need to. It's with time that you're going to feel more comfortable with their strengths and weaknesses, and it'll be a very personal thing. Um, if you're more sensitive to this, and I'm sure GMs and masters will be, they'll come to their own conclusions, and that's the way it should be.
Right. Okay. That was wonderful. And we have one question from Anish who asks, is neural network the only difference between them, or are there any others between Stockfish and Fat Fritz?
That would be the core difference. That would be the core difference. There's a minor difference, but it's not really worth mentioning. The internal values that were, let's say, designed to give the optimal performance for Stockfish's own neural network were changed and retuned because, as you saw, there are evaluation differences, and these values had to be tuned differently to accommodate the difference in judgments and whatever. I ran this on a process for 3 days. It came up with a different internal value, and that's been hard coded into the binary. So if you actually found a way to use the Stockfish neural network inside it, it would actually perform suboptimally.
Hmm. Okay. And one thing which I just need to
But
also
this is a
say,
detail, really.
right, is that the Fat Fritz, if someone buys it, comes with its own uh, interface, which is this one over here, which is like the Fritz interface from ChessBase. Uh, would you recommend like using this for people who want to, play against it and so on?
Play against, sorry?
Against Fat Fritz, because this is Fat Fritz right now, the
Okay,
Fritz interface. That,
okay.
I mean, when someone gets Fat Fritz, they can also run it here. Just I
Okay.
wanted people to know this, and you can also play a game here against Fat Fritz, because ChessBase 16, where I was using it right now, is mainly for hardcore analysis. But if someone wants to play against
How
an
come
engine,
I get to play black all the time?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you have this easy game functionality. I haven't tested it personally with Fat Fritz too, but when I used it in the past, I found it very pleasant. You can use it to, let's say, highlight the squares of moves of where you should avoid playing. For example, if I were to highlight, let's say, my knight b1, and it might tell me, well, you can play 2 legal moves, and this is red, and this is green, and this is purple, and the colors indicate what it
The
thinks
strength.
about these respective moves.
Right. Yeah. This is the analysis.
This is really nice.
function.
This is really nice if you're playing against it and trying to get a feel for it. So
Right. Okay. That's cool. Albert, this was very, very enlightening. Before you leave, I also want to invite Frederick, who was also in the chat, to just join in for a bit, and he can be here and can just.
Well, I owe Frederick a huge debt of gratitude. I mean, he was core to the very first Fat Fritz project, and he's been a great supporter and great help throughout. So yeah. Anytime, friend. Plus, we've been friends for many years. We've talked so often. We talk about all kinds of things. So yeah.
Yeah. And,
Anybody who doesn't know Frederick personally, all I can say is, well, he's the guys in chess.
Yeah, just adding him.
Hello.
Hello, Frederick. Hi. Can you hear me?
Hello. I can hear you, but I'm not in Zoom.
Yes, the Zoom link was not working because Albert and I had certain video issues there. So we thought we'll do it on Skype. Would you be able to come via video here?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Zoom was kept converting me into an Incredible Hulk without the muscles.
Maybe you will have to switch on your camera.
I don't know what it's up because I mean I've used Zoom extensively, my friends, and I haven't had that issue. It's weird. Well, we'll figure it out later on. It's not a problem.
By the way, there was this one more question that was asked by Scaletail, which said, since Fritz is a hybrid system, does it have 2 evaluation functions? One for neural and other for brute force one, or is there a different way it is done in Fat Fritz?
Okay, so there's 2 answers to that question because it has to do with also the way that the Stockfish developers have integrated it. So the first thing is you can resort to the original classic Stockfish evaluation, meaning the pure brute force with no neural network, in which case it's not Fat Fritz at all, because I have no influence on the classic evaluation. That's just the old engine itself. And if you go into the UCI settings, which you saw earlier on, setting the number of threads and so forth, and uncheck use NNUE, you'll get the classic old engine evaluations. And then it's just Stockfish, period. Okay. The second aspect of that answer, because I don't know if that's what he was speaking about, is that there is a known characteristic where the evaluation of the engine switches to Stockfish after the score goes above a certain point. And so if it's, let's say, over plus 2.0, it will use the old Stockfish engine. And the reason for that is this. The old Stockfish engine is much faster, obviously, because it's not reading a neural network. And it's assumed that after plus 2, it's not a factor anymore, that even Stockfish with a worse evaluation can no longer screw up the position. So it will use the Stockfish to finish it off and use this to accelerate the calculations.
Okay.
In my tests, there is a very modest ELO difference benefit to this, but it's there, so I left it.
Right.
We're talking like 5 ELO points, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with engine-to-engine matches.
Cool. Frederick, we cannot see you yet over here. I don't know if you can see the screen. Are you able to see? Or maybe he's not here, yeah?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you, but we can't see you. Is your
Send me a Zoom link. I'm in Skype here talking to you.
No, but Skype, but you are already live, Frederick, through Skype.
Okay. If the sound quality is fine,
it's perfect.
We stay here.
It's perfect.
Just enable your camera, a video camera inside of your Skype call.
How do I do that? Wait a second. Enable my camera.
Oh, yes, yes, it
Oh,
was.
Frederick.
Wow.
Nice to see you, Fred, and welcome.
Wow. And now switch off your engines, for heaven's sake.
Yes, I have done that. So
We're
now,
talking around the world. This is amazing that he's in Brazil somewhere in the jungles.
Rio de Janeiro.
I'm in
I'm up in the trees with my
Hamburg.
monkeys.
Yeah, he lives in the trees. And I'm in Hamburg and you're in Mumbai. Okay, hi.
hi,
Uh,
Frederick.
Thank you, Albert, for this wonderful presentation. And please keep doing this because a lot of people, and I saw Anish saying, wow, this is interesting. And he's following you, taking notes and everything, probably, because this is what people want to see. Can I give you some background?
Yes, I would like that, Frederick. But just before that, Anish says Frederick is the man who famously invented internet. Big fan here.
Was this before or after Al Gore?
Anish and I have been teasing each other since he was about 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would like to tell you a little bit about the background. In 2019, this crazy friend of mine, Albert, came up with this idea. Now, I've known Albert and worked with him intensely for almost 10 years. Is that true?
A little
Is
more.
that correct, Albert?
Since 2010. So we're about to hit 11.
11 years. And really intensively, sometimes with about 10 calls or exchanges of information per day. And even today, we have every single day. There's not a day when I come in and I don't find a Skype message from him and so on. The interesting thing is I've never met the guy. Can you imagine that? Never
person.
met him.
It's true. We've never had the opportunity to shake hands and pat each other on the back physically. And yeah, it's true.
So anyway, he came up with this idea of doing a neural network in 2019, except,
18,
we needed hardware. So he talked me into it. I thought this is a good idea, but I didn't want to go to my company and say, okay, let's buy computers and try and develop this. Why don't I do it myself? And I have a very, very technically brilliant son, Tommy, and you have the picture, I think, on the screen.
Mm-hmm. That's Tommy there standing, and who's the one who's with him sitting?
That's Noah. Noah's is a nephew.
Okay.
Very, very nice boy. I love him. And the two of them got together. Well, Tommy was doing it mainly, and he ordered all the hardware. Albert told him what was required, and he built a computer which was so powerful that in the year 2000, it would have been the most powerful computing entity in the world.
Sure.
There would have been nothing that was as strong as this thing.
Now
that sat under my table, and throughout the winter, it heated my office here in my house. So it was -5 degrees outside, no heating switched on, and beautifully warm inside. We called it the whoosh, and it played like up to 95.
Why was it called the whoosh? Tell him why we called it the whoosh.
Yeah, because of the cooling system, and interesting, you get used to it. It just goes whoosh in the background, but you get used to it. And it was playing about 95,000, sometimes up to 95,000 games per day. And Albert had a similar machine in Sao Paulo, and
Rio de Janeiro, funny guy.
Rio de Janeiro, in Rio, and he downloaded the games from my computer once or twice or 3 times a day, and his computer was learning from these games. Mine was just playing, and after the first 1,000 games or 2,000 games, it plays abysmal chess. The black side loses 3 pieces, but the white side can't win because it's lost 4 pieces for nothing. But it's very essential that it does this because it learns certain things which you don't learn from human games. For example, that 3 queens against no queens or 3 rooks against the bear king can win. And this it finds out by itself because it plays games where this happens. It's never happened in a human game, but it happens. And his idea was, let's take mega database and the computer games and so on. So we came up with a system, and I was very pleased that it worked. I have also sent you a game. One of the key moments was I had one of the nicest boys I know, actually the most entertaining. That's Anish. No, that's Anish is also very good. That's Nihal. Nihal Sarin was here with his trainer, Srinath, and they sat here and we had a great time. We had a lot of fun. We went to the zoo and so on. And we had a weekend planned with the grandchildren and going to the Baltic Sea and so on. But I made a terrible mistake. I showed them Fat Fritz, yeah. Fat Fritz 1. It was still in development. And they sat there and they started working on it and comparing it to Stockfish and other brute force engines and analyzing positions and so on. Next day I had to call my son and say, no, we're not coming. There's no way I can pry them away from the computer. So that convinced me. And the other thing is, that I have friends, I have a lot of friends in chess, and they have an average ELO of 2750 or something. They're all very, very, very strong players. And I've been working with them and showing them stuff and so on. And what happens so often is they look at a position, and this is the key moment for me. They look at a position which Fat Fritz says, play this. I would play this. And they'd say, what? This is rubbish. You cannot play that. It loses. And I say, tell me why. Of course, Fat Fritz can't tell you why. Just says that's the best move. And then I say, play it out. So they play. And after about 5 minutes, they say, okay, it wasn't that bad. It doesn't actually lose, but it's a complete draw. And after 5 more moves, they say, oh my God, that was brilliant. And so this is what I see. And this is what is of interest to me, that it plays unusual moves you've never seen before.
Right.
I must mention one thing. I'm not a fan of engine tournaments. Yeah. At the moment, everyone is saying, is it stronger? I think it's irrelevant if it is 20 points stronger than any other program. I mean, Anish, you're there. Are you desperately eager to have 3,700 instead of 3,690 as the engine strength? Is that absolutely key for you? No. What they're looking for is interesting, not tactical, not just tactical, but very deep positional ideas. And I know a lot of top grandmasters, all the way up to Magnus Carlsen, who are getting new ideas from these neural network engines.
Yeah.
So while it is of great concern to a number of people, 17 or 20 people, whether it is 7 points stronger or weaker than Stockfish, NN, or whatever, I don't really care too much about it. It's the other aspect that is of importance. And one last thing is that there is so much hatred in the engine world. I've never seen anything like that. Everyone hates everyone else. So I just keep out of this. I'm interested in my top grandmasters who are looking at the moves and who are learning from it and getting new ideas. We knew you could never take that pawn. And suddenly you say, Fat Fritz says, I take the pawn. And you say, what? But, 100 years of chess knowledge says you can't take that pawn. You try it, and it survives that and maybe even wins the game. And suddenly you say, oh my God, you can take it.
So to just make this point clear here, there's this one game that I would like to share, which is just a few moves. which was played by Nihal Sarin here, and I'll so that you understand how Nihal and Srinath, who is his coach, were able to use Fritz to come up with an interesting idea in a position. And before, so here's the game. It started off with Nihal being black. So Demchenko played e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. So it's the Italian. d3, knight f6, castles, castles, rook e1. And Srinath has written literally the only move we hadn't deeply prepared against before the game. The Turkish league was one of the few tournaments where Nihal was at the receiving end of the negative side of chance. So Nihal went knight g4, hitting the f2 pawn here, and Demchenko played rook e2, defending that pawn. And now came the move king h8, preparing for f5. So h3, and now black anyway went for the move f5, which means that if you take here, he would take with the f pawn and then go g3 with the queen coming in to h4. That would be a very strong attack. So bishop g5, knight back to f6, e takes f5, d5, pushing the bishop back, and bishop b5. So now you can see that this knight is hanging, and knight is attacked and the e5 pawn is hanging. And here Srinath mentions this is the critical point where black has to decide between knight d4 attacking the bishop and e4 attacking the knight. While a brute force engine would point towards e4, a neural network engine points towards nd4 right away. So here e4, the line goes d takes e4, d takes e4, queen d8, rook d8, bishop c6, e takes f3, bishop f3, rook d1, king h2, bishop f5, bishop f4, and turns out that the position is equal according to Stockfish, and for good reason, as the position is quite close to equal. However, it's not easy to get here. It's also not a draw yet. But the point is that after, instead of e4 here, the move is knight d4, hitting the bishop. So of course you need to take this guy, and this is what Nihal played. But bishop d4 is what he responded, and here Srinath mentions e takes d4, a very deep idea which the neural network engine sees instantly. Brute force engines also get here, but you have to bring them to it and wait for them to comprehend. This used to be the way we found hidden ideas when analyzing with powerful brute force engines. Make moves ourselves and let the engine catch up. However, with NN engine, the percentage of such blind shots increase substantially, and it also saves a lot of time. White's b5 bishop is totally sidelined now over here, and black gets full compensation due to the much better functioning of his pieces despite being a pawn down and the structure being unusual. This exact position from the opening is not very likely to reoccur, but I was very impressed by the unusual strategic idea. These are the building blocks of the evolution of human chess understanding. And he just gives this line g4, c6, bishop a4, a5, a3, queen d6, and says black's compensation is clear and the position frightening. If this happened over the board, black has excellent practical chances. I think this entire example just sums up why neural network engines are now what top players are going towards rather than brute force engines.
Sagar, I have sent you two pictures of the two boys, Nihal and Srinath, analyzing on my dinner table. Can you show them?
Yes,
I sent you in Skype.
Yes, I will. Just let me bring them on the screen.
It was so beautiful to watch them, and they sat there for 6-8 hours a day, just analyzing position after position, move after move.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a second. By the way, Albert, you agree with this, yes?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that it's this incredibly deep evaluation that lends itself to different things. The fact that these neural networks are able to study, let's say, process all of these positions and evaluations and stuff, and produce their own chess knowledge, their own chess conclusions and evaluations as a consequence of it, because they see so many positions and situations so far beyond the scope of human players. I mean, you and I, we could never in our lifetime look at a billion chess positions. It's impossible, much less evaluate them and include them in some kind of coherent understanding of chess and, as a whole. And they're able to do this. And even though they're not perfect, they may not be as, let's say, as efficient as, let's say, a human is, because we do this with so much fewer positions. The fact is that they compensate with this with so much knowledge and come to these, let's say, offbeat, strange conclusions that would never occur to us. Like you said, e takes d4 and locking up the bishop as the ultimate idea behind it. It's striking. And suddenly, it's not just that you can use this in your analysis later on. It's that you are going to be thinking about this in your own evaluations later on as well. You'll be thinking like, yeah, I remember that really unusual idea where he played this strange e takes d4 and then boxed in the bishop. I wonder if I can't try something similar in this situation, which has differences, but I can use that overall idea that I learned from the neural network while I was studying with it.
Brilliant.
And yes,
Brilliant.
That's how it's going to advance our understanding of chess and chess players and chess knowledge.
Yeah, and while Frederic, this is the picture that Frederic sent me. This is Srinath, our very well-known vice captain, sitting here with Nihal at Frederic's home in Hamburg. This is the living room, and as Frederic said, there are a lot of plans, but once they were given the Fat Fritz engine, they just didn't get up from their chair.
Yes.
And here they were analyzing this. This was when it was in the development stage, right, Frederic?
Yes, it was, and it was running in Rio, and on Albert's machine, and they were just accessing it as on that notebook.
We mentioned about the cloud computing. I mean, obviously they don't have a super GPU, which was necessary at the time, inside of that modest but very nice laptop. So through the cloud computing, I set up my desktop with two very powerful graphics cards. I gave them maximum access and power ability. And through it, the engine looks like it's running inside their own laptop, but it's actually running across the world from my desktop at home.
Yeah. So moving forward, what are the plans, Albert? Are you going to keep continuously working on this engine, or how is it?
So the current neural network of FatFritz2 is not being worked on specifically. I'm doing some tests with it. If I find some improvements, I will certainly release them. But as a project, I consider basically it's done what I set out to do, and I'm really happy with it. I have future plans for future neural networks, different ideas, things that may be larger, maybe smarter, maybe a combination, maybe smaller, who knows? But I'm definitely in the test process where I'm trying every idea possible, because all of these things need to be tested out and find out. I mean, I didn't just sit around and think, Eureka! I know what I'm going to do. No, you have the idea, and then you have to test it to death and see if it actually works. Right. And this process takes months and months and months.
Well, we wish you good luck. And Frederic, you have been at the forefront of engines and computer chess for over 4 decades now, nearly 3.5 decades.
Yes.
And four decades, and you saw the engines just beginning. There was, as you said, there were no words like database and all of that when you were getting these things up and running. And now we have reached this stage where there are neural networks, artificial intelligence coming into chess. How does it feel? And to still stay relevant, you are still trying to come up with these new ideas.
Oh, he's more than relevant. He's essential.
Actually, in 1979, I think it was, I wrote an article, or I designed a film. I was a documentary filmer for German television, science documentaries, on artificial intelligence, and I very, very cleverly predicted the things that computers will never be able to do. It's a very clever introduction to the film, except it was all wrong. They can do all of the things I said. This is what they'll never be able to do. They will never be able to walk on 2 feet across lawn. They will not be able to operate a coffee machine. They will not be able to understand a human being speaking and so on. All of this is, of course, completely normal today. And now chess is one area where I always say we're the first people to really experience this, that in a highly intellectual activity, computers exceed our playing strength, our ability to handle the information and the strategy and so on. So they're cleverer than us in chess. And this is going to happen all over the place. We're just the first.
Right.
Yeah, I have to agree with this, and I think that one of the things that's even, let's say, 15 years ago, we already saw PC programs beating humans. This was not strange; it was a commonplace, and we accepted this reality. Yes, my desktop computer of 2005 could beat Kramnik, or Anand, or Kasparov, and they accepted this too. So it wasn't like just me, the human, thinking that's, oh yeah, the top human players understood this and accepted this. But there's a difference, because this was because they were out calculating them. They never got tired. These were the classic explanations at the time about it. The idea that the engines would somehow reach an understanding of chess, an evaluation of complex strategic ideas, not through just I calculated 55 moves ahead and that's how I came up with this. But their pure evaluation would be so sophisticated and so subtle that was unthinkable.
Yes.
You never heard that in the speech of the times on why engines are going to be beating us. We just went to the idea, well, sure, today it's calculating at 20 plies ahead, and well, it'll be beating us even more in 2020 because it will be beating us, but it's calculating 55 moves ahead. But nowhere in that conversation did we discuss about how the engines would be understanding and evaluating complex strategic ideas and presenting these long, concepts in a much deeper way than the human players themselves. That was our pride. Well, yeah, they can out-calculate us, but we're still smarter. That's no longer true.
Yeah, now they can't say
Well said.
Yeah. So we leave it at that, and we are excited to see new developments happening here. But as of now, we can say, if not the strongest, Fat Fritz definitely one of the strongest engines in the world of chess, and it has happened because of the
certainly an invaluable addition to any player.
Yeah, invaluable.
Regardless.
Yes, exactly. I think it's more about how you can use it to get new ideas, and I mean, these ratings will keep on fluctuating. Something will go up, something will go down.
It's the nature of the game.
Yeah, but at the end of it, if you use it, you may get new ideas, and that's what matters for chess players. Albert, thank you for spending time today coming here, and Frederick, thank you to you as well, and I hope to catch up with you guys very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sagar. I wanted to thank you very much for having me here. I really enjoyed it. I want to give a warm hello to the entire audience and people who are watching it, Anish and the Indian players and whomever, and just say, well, thank you for having me here, and I hope you get out to have a chance to see Fat Fritz 2 and enjoy it.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.
Guys, that was Albert Silver and Frederic Friedel. It was, I think, one of the most enlightening sessions for me as a chess player. My knowledge of chess engines increased by leaps and bounds because of it, and I hope that happened to you as well. I know you had a lot of questions here, but there was a lot that I couldn't ask them. Maybe I'll try to get Albert and Frederick once again at some point in the future to get that. But if you would like to get Fat Fritz, the links are in the description. You can have them. if you are in the Indian subcontinent, consider buying it from Chess Base India. If from outside that, in Europe, USA, and other countries, then I have also put in the chessbase.com shop link. So get it from there and explore the world of this new neural network engines. I would like to thank all the mods for very nicely maintaining the just calmness of this session and nothing wrong happening here. So thank you so much for that, and I'll see you guys shortly. Until then, bye bye.